I want to call to order the special meeting of the Morris Township Planning Board, November 14th, 2022. Um, The legal notice required in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act has been satisfied, and a statement certifying same will be executed. Would you please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance?
To the flag of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible.
Thank you. Sonia, on the roll call?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Dorothy.
Here.
Ms. Murphy. Here. Mr. Quillen.
Here.
Mr. Bai.
Here.
Ms. Wilson.
Here.
Mr. Alesso.
Here.
Mr. Flowers.
Here.
Mr. Benoit.
Here.
Mr. Warner.
Here.
Mr. Phillips.
Here.
Mr. Slate. Mr. Fishinger.
Here.
And I, Sonia Santiago, here.
Okay, thank you. Tonight is a special meeting for a hearing with the Red Bulls application. Sonia, would you please read the application?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. This is application PBO 622, Red Bulls Arena, Inc. for site plan, block 9101, lots 4 and 5, 101-103 Columbia Road in the OL 40 PUD zone. This is a continuation from August 15th, September 12th, September 28th, October 3rd, October 17th, and November 7th of 2022 public hearings. Applicant proposes to construct a New York Red Bulls training facility for professionals, academy and youth sports team to include outdoor fields, building used for administrative and business offices, gymnasiums, field houses, athletic trainings and fitness, classroom, dormitories, and indoor field, food service operations, physical therapy, and auxiliary facilities related to athletic training.
Thank you. Before we proceed, Mr. Warner, do you want to address an issue?
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of predicate issues, if I may. First of all, we carried this meeting without further notice to this evening from a week ago this evening, and this is a special meeting, so the board continues to have jurisdiction to hear and decide the application. It's my understanding that the 246 board members who are on the dais and our 2 board members who are on the virtual dais all are qualified to vote this evening. Those board members who missed the last meeting both have qualified themselves by listening to and watching the entirety of the tape and have certified as to same, so they are qualified to vote. We do have 8 board members to vote this evening. Also, I was made.
Excuse me, Steve, could I interrupt you? So I read the transcript. I did not view the video. I hope that's sufficient.
The transcript's sufficient. I didn't know which one you did. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, under the municipal land use law, that is sufficient for you to qualify, and I do understand you certified to having done so, so we're good. Additionally, I was made aware of the fact that a member of the public made a request of the board to reopen the public comment, which was closed at the last hearing a week ago. My advice as the board attorney is that the board not reopen the public comment session that was clearly closed at the hearing 1 week ago. At the beginning of the hearing last week, the chairman and the board members made it clear that we were entertaining public comment that evening. It was going to be done roughly at the same time, if you will, as the questioning of the last witness, Mr. Keller, but it was also made clear that members of the public were being afforded at least 5 minutes for their public comments, in addition to their time asking questions if they wish to do both. Also, after the last witness, Mr. Keller completed his testimony, was questioned by the board members and the board professionals. The chair again and the board members again made it clear that the public was being afforded an opportunity at that time to ask questions and also to make their public comments under oath. 9 members of the public were sworn in that evening and made public comments. And the board permitted several of those public members to exceed the stated time limitation, which was within the discretion of the board. At the conclusion of the public comment that evening, Mr. Chairman, you and board members and myself again made it clear that we were carrying the hearing to tonight solely for the purpose of applicant's counsel having an opportunity to make summation, which is traditionally and by law the last item of process before the board deliberates and votes, and of course for the board to deliberate and vote this evening. And again, it was made very clear at the conclusion of the testimony. Mr. Chairman, I'm quoting you. Thank you. So at this point, I'll close the public comment period. We'll adjourn until next meeting to do deliberations. We went on, I stated, so we're carrying for a summation and deliberation of a vote. The direct testimony and the public testimony has concluded. And there were further statements in that regard. And as I said, at the beginning of the meeting, before the public comment and after the public comment, it was all clarified. That is the process and procedure that's provided for by the municipal land use law, and particularly Section 10C of the municipal land use law, as well as governing case law. I would be remiss, at least in my opinion, if I didn't point out that throughout the 6 prior hearings, members of the public were afforded, in my opinion, a liberal opportunity to make public comment, notwithstanding the fact that we had not yet reached the formal public comment period that we did reach and concluded 1 week ago today. Also, I'd be remiss, in my opinion, if I didn't mention that the public had an opportunity and did, in fact, participate throughout the rezoning hearing process and throughout the GDP amendment hearing process, which were separate from the site plan and variance relief application before the board this evening, but nevertheless, they were related and processes leading up to this evening. So there is no doubt factually, let alone in my opinion, that members of the public had a full and fair opportunity to comment. And in fact, I believe it would be unfair if the board were to reopen now, given that we afforded that full and fair opportunity at the last hearing and beforehand. And indeed, the process is such that now as we had stated as a board, we are proceeding to summation, deliberations, and vote. So that is my advice to the board.
Thank you, Mr. Warner. This is sort of a difficult situation for us because we do value the input from the public. We value the questions that they ask. We value the comments that they make. I'm concerned about members of the public who might not have shown up this evening because they believe the public comment period was over. If we entertain public comments and then they learn that we were entertaining public comments. So I appreciate your comments, and unless board members have any view otherwise, I'd like to maintain that the public comment period is over and proceed with the meeting.
And I did neglect to mention, my apologies, Mr. Chairman, that I believe, and counsel for the applicant can certainly weigh in, I believe that the applicant is taking the same position and requesting that the board proceed with summation, deliberation, and vote.
Agreed.
Right, thank you. Because as counsel said, this is a legal process. We have ways that we need to do things and ways to make sure the integrity of the process is held throughout the entire process. So unless board members have any objection, I think we need to not reopen the public comment period and proceed with the hearings.
Mr. Chairman, I think we should follow the advice of our attorney.
Right, thank you. Okay, proceeding, I would like to say before we proceed with with the, um, the applicant summation, I would like to, first of all, thank the members of the public for all your time and effort, your deliberation, your conscientiousness, your consideration of all the things that were discussed in these meetings. As I've said in the past, and I'll say it now, and I'm sure I'll say it in the future, the board relies on the public for their intimate knowledge of the location of the area of the application to provide to us questions and comments that we might not be aware of during the period of the application, during the hearings. And so we do rely on that. We appreciate all of your time and effort. There are certain things that we cannot consider by law, such as we don't want this project. That's not something that, and counsel, please correct me if I'm wrong, but the application before us is for something, and we need to identify specific areas that might not comport to the zoning or might not comport to the best interest, might not have the right positive or negative aspects of an application. We can't just deny application because we don't want it. Likewise, we can't say, well, we'd rather have an office and research facility there. That's not the application before us. We can only act on the application before us. No one came through in the 5 years or so that the lot's been vacant to construct an office or a research facility. The applicant came through with this application for a piece of property that's zoned for this use, and that's the subject of this hearing. So I can appreciate if someone says, we don't want that, or I'd rather have something else. It's not within the purview of this board to say, we're going to vote no because we don't like it, or we want something else here. And that's kind of where we stand as a board. So unless board members want to add anything to that, or we can just proceed to I guess in the deliberations, you can comment on that. At this point, why don't we proceed with summation? Unless, Councilor, do you want to add anything to that?
No, nothing you said, in my opinion, Mr. Chairman, was incorrect. That's the way a lawyer says that everything you said was correct.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Assiopi.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, board. I also want to thank the public. We may not always agree on every comment they made. I think I'd like to say we agreed more than we disagreed, but I felt like I also made some acquaintances along the way, Mr. O'Connor, Mr. DeMuro, the Kesslers, and when I see them walking around Morris Township, I'm going to be happy that they're in my township, and I'm proud to have them as neighbors, to tell you the truth. So, and I am also happy that their comments they did with respect, I think, and dignity and decorum, and that's always, I'm always happy to see that. So I appreciate that, and I thank you. Some of the people here will know that my closings are typically 2 or 3 minutes. This is going to take me a little bit more, so I hope you bear with me, because we've been at it. The Red Bulls have been at it for 3 years, and the town maybe 2 years. So it's been a while, and it's a unique application. I'd like to start by taking a few minutes to repaint the picture for you of who the Red Bulls are, the purpose of the facility, and just how that facility is intended to be utilized. At the first hearing, which really seems like a lifetime ago, you heard from Mark de Grand Prix, sounds like a long time ago, the team president, and Connor Lade, the manager of alumni and public relations and a Morris Township native son. And they described for you what the Red Bulls organization is all about. The Red Bulls are a professional soccer team, and like all other major league professional teams, the Red Bulls are a serious organization that strives to maintain a culture of excellence, both on and off the pitch. everything they do, day in, day out, is in furtherance of their priorities, winning and preserving their culture. In order to win, the Red Bulls must ensure that they have the best product. And the only way to have that best product is to develop players. That's what they do. In an environment, and they have to do that in an environment that's safe, secure, private, and without distraction. It's no different from the other New York professional teams you all know about. These are secure, quiet, organized places, except that the Red Bulls have a culture of developing young talent from within their professional system. The young players know that to be a professional, you must act as a professional 24/7. It is not like the fun, somewhat chaotic youth leagues that you may see in the local parks in the summer. That's not what's going to be going on here. If you think for a minute that this incredible facility is not laser focused to that commitment of excellence without distraction, then we did a poor job explaining who we are and what we are about. The professional players require a professional facility. That's what this is about. It is critical that the soccer training fields are well maintained and not overused. I stress not overused, and have quality consistent with the fields they're going to be playing on at their own stadium and other stadiums. Overuse can be detrimental from a competition standpoint, and more importantly, becomes a player safety issue. A significant portion of the soccer season, and I didn't know all this, I learned it as part of this application, is played during the winter months, which is not ideal for grass growing, and the fields will endure greater wear and tear during this time. It's for this reason and these reasons, having an adequate number of fields will allow the Red Bulls to rotate use for safety and maintenance purpose. It does not mean that they will program all of the fields simultaneously or that this will be some kind of free-for-all. That's not what's going to happen. To the contrary, having too many players out at once would cause just the type of distraction to the players that we avoid at all costs, and of course would harm these fields. To reiterate one point that Mr. Amorosa made during his testimony, we do not anticipate more than 100 to 150 individuals in the aggregate on the fields during any given time. And there will, for the most part, typically be no more than 2 fields lit on every given night. That will be what's common. Like any special project, we have been collectively, we've been at this for some time. The Red Bulls for almost 3 years, as I said, and the town for over 2. We have been through the rezoning process, the GDP process, a host of TCC meetings, and today is our 7th site plan hearing. Each of these stages were open to the public, and as you know, the public certainly participated as they should every step of the way. In fact, and I'll get to this in a minute, many revisions were made to the site plans, in order to address the neighbors' concerns even before we submitted our application. I would also like to mention, despite some comments to the contrary, with respect to environmental, we have been working on environmental since before we acquired one property and signed the contract for another, since October of last year, to ensure that the environmental condition of the property is not a problem, and it's not. And we have always worked collaboratively with Honeywell on a regular basis. We still do. One of my partners at the firm sends 1 or 2 emails a day sometimes, just on these issues. As you might imagine, even like you, if you were buying a home, there is absolutely no one that needs to ensure that there are 0 environmental issues more than the Red Bulls. No one. And with respect to the FAA, again, despite some comments to the contrary, we have been working with the FAA since as early as June, which is as soon as the site plan drafts were finalized. That's the only time we could give something to the FAA. Now, we have all heard that while this facility certainly will be substantial, it will have a much lesser impact regarding traffic and the intensity of development than the permitted 900,000 square foot of office lab space. We are talking about 3,600 parking spaces for that use. That's 3,600 cars for the office versus mid to high 300s for the Red Bulls. And the traffic study showed 1,100 trips at peak hour for the office versus somewhere it ranged from 100s to 300s for the Red Bull. There was also some talk that the Red Bull facility is being placed in a residential area and that some would prefer an office building versus the training facility, even though those same folks were concerned about the traffic generated from this facility. First, the intense commercial office lab use is already permitted. In fact, it was already approved, some portion of it. 900,000 square feet of lab space, which will be, if you figure in parking decks, it might be close to 1 million square feet of buildings. That's not residential. That's not a quaint office building. It's a major complex with 3,600 cars and 1,100 trips an hour. So I'm really not sure how you could be favoring a 900,000 square foot complex when you're also concerned about the minimal traffic that will be coming from the Red Bulls facility. In fact, I cannot think of any commercial use. Maybe your traffic expert can, and ours can, but I can't, and I've been doing it for over 30 years. With the geographic scale of this project, which would have less users on a daily basis than the proposed training facility. Finally, there was a comment that a professional athletic facility near a residential community is unheard of, and cannot peacefully coexist. Well, my firm worked on the Jets facility in that complex. And as you know, all you have to do is walk across the street from this project to the Jets facility to see that. There not only are there houses close by, but we just sold and being constructed a senior assisted living type facility right next to the Jets facility. And I can tell you, because I know it, I've been there, that training facility, the Jets training facility, does not have the architecture, looks like a warehouse, does not have the landscaping, it does not have any of the other benefits that the Red Bulls facility is providing here, and much of it which came from the public outreach. So it really should come as no surprise to Columbia Park homeowners that there would be some development on the site. Every Columbia Park homeowner was acknowledged and received and acknowledged the public offering statement. And on page 1 of the public offering statement, there's a section called Special Notice, Special Risks to Purchasers. It's all in cap. And I'm just going to read one paragraph from that public offering statement. As discussed above, the lands within the Columbia Park are zoned for office and research uses and are presently developed with Honeywell International Inc.'s 185,000 square foot research building and are proposed to be developed with up to an additional 715,000 square feet of office and research uses that may be contained in one or more buildings for a total of 900,000 square feet of office and research uses in Columbia Park. Developer, meaning the developer of their homes, cannot control the design and timing of the development of the other uses and improvements in Columbia Park. As a result, prospective purchasers are advised that the impact of these uses and improvements to the use and enjoyment of one's unit cannot be fully ascertained at this time. In addition, there will be construction activity within the community and other lands in Columbia Park that may create noises, odors, traffic, lights, and other impact that could affect the community and the use and enjoyment of one's unit. And in addition, the use of the roads and other common areas, including the signage, was all expressly contemplated and permitted as part of this mixed-use project, and it was done so by a declaration. The declaration is recorded of title, of record, and every homeowner would have seen that and take subject to it in its title. And since we will own Stockton, this document actually gives the residents the right to drive on Stockton, not the other way around, since Stockton is on our property. So while all that's true, the Red Bulls always acknowledged that lesser impact does not mean no impact at all. Obviously, any development will have some impact on the neighbors, and the Red Bulls have always been very sensitive to that. We knew going in that it was not realistic to make everybody happy when you develop vacant land. It's just not. I've never seen it. I've been doing it for a long time. But the Red Bulls continually gave their best effort. So what have they done? Well, from the start, we have meaningfully engaged with the public. At the outset, we arranged a town hall public meeting that was very well attended. We introduced ourselves and heard public comments and concerns at that time. And we said at that time, we'd intended to keep the lines of communications open as the project developed and evolved. And that's exactly what we did. We maintained a dialogue with our neighbors. By my count, we met via Zoom with the Columbia Park HOA board approximately 6 times. And we also met with the full HOA by Zoom, as well as communicating with some of the individual homeowners along the way. We also met with or spoke with the Green Knoll Featherly neighborhood a number of times, and we met with the representatives of Morris County Golf Club. I was even authorized to say that the Morris County Golf Club supports the project. Now, I know a little bit about Morris Township, living here, and I know about Morris Township land use. And I can say with absolute confidence that there's never been public outreach, never, quite like what we've seen here with this project. It's unprecedented. And I know this board and I know the council encourages that. And that's what we did. And I can tell you also that the Red Bulls acted on that input. We heard the comments, and where possible, we incorporate many of these comments into the site plan even before the hearings. So I'm going to ask Rich to pull these up. I don't know if you can read it well, but there are a list of 18 revisions we made to the plans. Most of them are not even conditions because they were already in the plans before we submitted our site plan. And I'm just going to run through them very quickly. The first thing we heard, I think it was at that first meeting, is that I really didn't like where the drop-off was for the academy players off Stockton. So we moved that to the main parking lot. We allowed, another thing, they wanted not all traffic to be coming on Stockton. So we allowed exiting and entering movements on the service drive from the main lot. They wanted a double line on Stockton. Now, subject to permission from the HOA, we're going to do that. They wanted directional signage, extensive directional signage so that people weren't milling about the community and they were directed back to Columbia Road. We did that. We reduced the signage. We extended, number 5, we extended the walkway on Stockton from the townhomes to Columbia Road with a connection to a loop around the pond. 6, we agreed to pave the gravel trail. 7, we added pedestrian crosswalk signs at Prescott. 8, we added, and we are going to add and install no stopping or standing signs along Prescott. The loading dock We relocated the loading dock to an enclosed space below the main building. So the loading dock is underground. That's a big deal. We agreed to fix a drainage system in a depression to address wet areas west of Stockton where water currently ponds, and which the neighbors asked us to do. We relocated the competition pitch to the west side of Stockton. We'll talk a little bit about that later. We substantially enhanced landscaping throughout the site. We provided, I don't know what these points are, Jim Slate, but apparently we racked up 1,300 points where 700 are required because of the size of the trees, the amount of the trees, the landscaping that we're installing. And we addressed comments from the HOA's own landscape architect to improve the buffers on the east and west side and to install more trees on Stockton. We lengthened and raised an existing berm. 14, we rearranged the tree layout on berm along Stockton to close gaps and improve buffering in main building. 15, we added evergreen trees and shrubs along the service road to improve the existing buffer opposite Featherly cul-de-sac. 16, we agreed to obtain a dark sky certifications and agreed that the facades would not be illuminated. 17, we agreed to install better construction fencing along Stockton Drive and close off the access road from Aldrich. That's something that the Kesslers asked for. And last but no means least, of course, we agreed to withdraw the withdrawal of Field 9 from the application. And just to reiterate, we are using approximately half of the 80 or so acres that comprise the property. And if you want to talk about, unrestricted acreage, this application does not utilize about 20 usable acres. So that's what we did as part of our public outreach. We were serious about the outreach. It was just not talk, and we performed on the outreach. And I will tell you that as a Morris Township resident myself, I could not be more proud that the New York Red Bulls have chosen this site and this area right here in my hometown to create this state-of-the-art premier facility. I'm even more certain now, after all these hearings, that this facility, if approved, will be a triumph, not only to Morris Township, but also for the surrounding communities, Morris County, our state, and yes, even our country, because it's one of a kind. And I believe we are indeed very fortunate to have the opportunity to host the Red Bulls and its facility here in Morris Township. It's a true feather in our cap and a testament to the folks here and on the council that give their time to make Morris Township what it is and what has attracted the Red Bulls to our little special community. But just as important as the purpose and use of the facility, I believe the Red Bulls are a perfect fit for our community because of their culture. And you heard this from Mark and Connor. In addition to what they're using it for, the culture and value of the Red Bulls organization, family first, community involvement, a bunch of charitable endeavors, et cetera, are the same values that we all strive to achieve here in Morris Township every day. So in conclusion, the site plan that has been submitted here, as the chairman mentioned, is essentially entirely consistent with the zoning and with the GDP. As with any project, of course, we are requesting a few technical variances, but otherwise, this site plan preserves the integrity and enhances, I think, the integrity of the zoning and GDP in their entirety. And for all the reasons you have heard through these many public hearings, the Red Bulls respectfully request that our application, their application, I feel like I'm part of it, for this premier facility be approved. And we really thank you and the public for all your devoted efforts and consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mastriopi. And thank you for the list of changes you made prior to the hearings. Because at this point, after these hearings, I'm going to ask Mr. Warner to list all the conditions that came about during the course of the hearings. Changes that basically the applicant has agreed to based upon board recommendations, based upon public input, um, based upon whatever occurred that made you realize or you're willing to make a change. So Mr. Warner, if you could identify those.
Certainly, my pleasure. In fact, I might do you one better if I may. I'm going to start with the relief sought and then go into the conditions, just so the
Perfect.
board has everything in front of them. Again, as I understand the applicant's relief, it is as follows: preliminary and a request for preliminary and final site plan approval with the following variance relief: a 6-foot by 10-foot guardhouse on the service road, which is technically in the front yard. Also, at 74 feet from the boundary line, it is not 175 feet from the boundary line as required. And at 350 feet from Columbia Road, it is not at least 450 feet from Columbia Road. So there are setback deviations with respect to the guardhouse. Most of these are indeed setback deviations. The chiller at Building A, 154 feet versus 175 feet required from the boundary line with the golf club. The generator at Building F1, 147 feet versus 175 feet from the boundary line with the self-storage building lot. The chiller by Building F1, 165 feet, as opposed to 175 feet from the boundary line with the self-storage building lot. The above-ground fuel tank by F1, these are all, of course, accessory structures, 167 feet, as opposed to 175 feet from the boundary line with the self-storage building lot. The refuse and recycling enclosure at Building F1, 115 feet, as opposed to 175 feet from the boundary line with the self-storage building lot. And finally, it's my understanding was also sought an exception, design exception, lesser extent than a variance for some steep slope disturbance greater than 25% grade. I believe that is all the relief.
That's it.
That is sought by the applicant. I do have a list of conditions that, as I understand it, the applicant has stipulated to, and the applicant is represented by counsel here this evening to tell me if and when I'm wrong, and that the applicant did not stipulate to any portion of the above. Let me know. But I have the report dated August 5th, 2022 from Paul Phillips, the TCC report, and any and all other TCC reports. Mr. Fishinger's traffic report dated July 28, 2022. Our fire chief's report, August 15th. The Environmental Commission recommendations from July 14, and I believe also August 5th, as modified or amended and agreed to with the board during the hearings, such as with respect to hours of operation and field usage. Comply with all applicable environmental laws and regulations, comply with the GDP as amended, not impact or change in any way the existing walking trails except to pave with asphalt the stone dust trail along the service road from Columbia Road, I believe, to Aldrich Court is what I have. And I have a transcript reference. Except for the areas located within the wetlands or wetland transition areas, provided the HOA provided HOA permission is obtained. Comply with all New Jersey statutes and local ordinances regarding electric vehicle charging stations and make-ready electric vehicle charging parking spaces. Address the existing draining condition that is causing standing water at the pond northwest of Stockton. Test and inspect all generators, chillers, etc., only during weekday hours between the hours of 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. Conduct a post-construction noise study or audit to ensure compliance with all applicable noise regulations and ordinances, including but not limited to NJAC 7:29 et sec, and take all necessary steps to reduce the noise levels at the boundary lines of the site in the event same exceed the applicable maximum thresholds. Make a good faith effort to construct the berm and install all applicable landscaping to shield the townhouses across Stockton Drive in Columbia Residential East during or immediately after the conclusion of the Phase 1 construction, recognizing the potential impacts on, among other things, recognizing the potential impact of, among other things, seasonal alignment, force majeure, unavailability, or delay of materials. Use only the Honeywell service road for all construction vehicles, construction staging and the like, and fence the entire perimeter of the construction sites. Install and maintain temporary construction fencing that will be opaque, green, scrim along the perimeter of the construction site, fronting the Stockton Drive and extending to the driveway entering the facility. No use, there will not be, bear with me, it said do not use the Field 9 area, the former Field 9 area, as a staging area or storage area for construction materials or equipment. No construction staging within the boundary setbacks adjacent to residential areas. Provide appropriate dust suppression during construction. Field 9 shall be eliminated from the site plan, and in the event the applicant ever intends to construct Field 9 or any additional fields other than those provided for in the revised site plan application, then the applicant will be required to obtain approval from the appropriate land use board with jurisdiction over the application at such time. All field lights shall be shut off within 30 minutes after field usage and in no event later than 10 p.m. on any night. All parking lot lights shall be shut off except for security level lighting and any code required lighting no later than 11 p.m. on any night. No sale of any alcoholic beverages on the premises. Close off the access street across from 1 Aldrich Court during construction. The sports lighting shall be permitted only as testified to, including but not limited to color temperature no greater than 5,700 degrees Kelvin, dark sky compliant, no light spillage beyond the property boundary lines, and the angles of the fixtures will be adjusted as necessary to ensure no light spillage. Matte, M-A-T-T-E, black finish on fixtures to eliminate reflection of lower fixtures. Obtain dark sky certification from the IDA. Conduct post-installation lighting audit and testing and remediate any light intensity or similar exceedances as deemed reasonable by the Township Engineering Department. The applicant and any successors shall maintain the level of trees and other landscape buffering and screening in perpetuity. I think the computer liked that one in particular. The install signage providing no stopping or standing along Prescott Drive, subject again to HOA permission. Change the timing of the signalization at various signalized intersections, including the Columbia Road entrance, as set forth in the traffic report of Mr. Keller, if necessary, based upon actual trip counts after Phase 1 of the project is complete, all of which is subject to the review and approval of the Morris County Engineering Department. Install centerline striping along the length of Stockton Drive and Prescott Drive within the site. Install Knox boxes or other mechanisms as deemed reasonable by the fire chief for emergency access egress by emergency access by emergency vehicles and first responders. The applicant may only widen from 2 foot 8 inches to a maximum of 3 feet those directional signs deemed appropriate by the board planner, subject to his reasonable discretion. Green fence scrim on the roadway side of the fencing to screen the signage scrim on the inside field side of the fencing. On-site directional signage to direct traffic to the Stockton-Columbia intersection to exit the site. Any proposed solar to meet township ordinance requirements. Design the building to satisfy as much as practicable LEED, LEED standards. Sprinkler system to be installed where necessary to water proposed landscaping, and all landscaping to be properly maintained by the applicant. All construction to be in conformance with township ordinance requirements. Building murals shall not be lighted. Landscape buffering to be provided as approved by the board engineer for all utility metering required by the various utility providers. No lighting on the proposed basketball and tennis court. The proposed PA system on the competition field only, and no music to be played, only the national anthem. I like stopping at that point. That's all I had, though. Thank you. I'd ask counsel for the applicant if I stated anything inaccurately, if all of the aforementioned is and was indeed stipulated to by and on behalf of the applicant.
I think you did a fantastic job. Just one other minor point. You say install center line striping along the length of Stockton Drive and Prescott Drive. That's true, again, with the permission of the HOA. That's all we wanted to add there. That's it.
Understood. Where such permission is required, all we can do is require the applicant to do it and make good faith efforts to obtain the permission of the HOA to effectuate it.
Okay, thank you very much. Board members, were there
Chairman,
any?
I'd
Yes,
like to make
Mr.
a
Wilson?
motion to get the deliberation started.
That's next.
No, do
We
you,
don't need a motion.
okay.
That's-
What about
that's
questions
next.
on the,
Well, now I'm going to open up the board. If anyone had any additions or comments on the stipulations as presented by Mr. Warner. Mr. Flowers, you want to start?
Sure. Most of the questions I had were cleared up, so I guess there was some additional work that went into it since the draft was circulated, so thank you for that. I do have two additional things here. Concerning the construction of the berm, there's a lot of, carve outs, right? So there's all these things that could happen where you don't have to construct it immediately. But then we're also saying during or immediately after the conclusion of the phase 1 construction. That seems to go against what we had discussed, at least my memory of it. I thought it was, pretty much make a good faith effort to do this as soon as possible. So to leave that phrase in there or immediately after the conclusion of phase 1, I feel like we should delete or immediately after. That seems to be more in line with the spirit of at least what I remembered.
I think we testified, I'm sorry, but I think we testified to the opposite because Mr. Amorosa was saying how construction might mess up the berm. So he doesn't want to build a berm and then construction somehow mess it up and then have to come back and redo the berm. So that's why we had this language in there. At the very, least, it will be done at the completion of the phase 1 construction or as part of it.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Lester?
Through you, I'm asking the question of the applicant. Does that mean that they wouldn't reconsider? I mean, I think I agree with Mr. Flowers. I think that was something that was brought out many times by the residents, and having seen the site, and if I was living there, yeah, I understand that the berm may get damaged and you may have to resod it or reseed it, but I think that's a cost of doing business to keep everyone happy.
Mr.
But-
Dacioppi?
Yeah, I'm not a contractor. Go ahead.
I am.
Right. So I'm not a contractor, but I know there's no way during a construction project, you're going to be able to landscape or do anything because it will get destroyed. So I think the client will agree to build a berm, but build a berm. It might not be, exactly to the specifications of the plan, and it will not have any landscape on it, but there will be some berm there to the satisfaction of the engineer. And then at the end, by the end of that construction, we'll put it into shape.
So then we can call that an interim berm.
Yeah,
Berm, okay,
it's a good way to put it.
thank you,
Thank you.
thank you. Ms. Wilson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I have a couple of questions and comments. And I would
I'm sorry, Ms.
also,
Wilson. I'm sorry,
What?
Mr. Flowers wasn't finished yet. Let's go
Ah,
back to him.
okay.
That was just the one thing. I do have one other item here. Regarding the sports lighting, the one thing I thought was missing here there were supposed to be like some, like I thought there was to be shielded. What happened to that language? The residential side shielded fixtures.
Yeah, I'm going to allow applicants counsel because this is what was stipulated to. And to be clear, the board,
I thought this was included in the testimony, right?
I'm not saying it wasn't.
Oh, okay.
I'm saying what I read was what was agreed to, stipulated to by the applicant, or I should say, the applicant confirmed that they stipulated to this. If there's a question, or for that matter, the board has the ability to impose conditions. Within reason, the applicant has the ability to oppose those conditions. So,
But if those shields were included in the testimony and the plans, is that the expectation here? That's what we're approving?
I think
What-
the
what-
applicant
what-
should be
what-
afforded an opportunity to explain why it is apparently the applicant is not at least currently stipulating to that.
So here's what I would say, is if we don't believe that it was testified, because we don't believe there are shields to the sports lighting. We believe that you can't see the fixture because you can't see the light bulb because the fixture itself is a shield. But if we had testimony that they were installing shields, then we will live by that testimony. So we will agree to do shields if that's what's testified to by Mr. Zeller. But we don't believe that was the case.
And just as a point of clarification, I'm looking at the list that Steve just went through, and on the one point, it does say the sports lighting shall be permitted only as testified to, including but not limited to residential side shielded fixtures. So I think we kind of caught it.
That was in the initial draft.
It was
but
in my
what was
initial
just
draft,
read, that was
right.
dropped.
Right, the applicant, because the applicant, it was no longer stipulated to, is my only point,
Oh,
yes.
okay, all right.
But now we've had it play out, and I guess you have we have a stipulation from the applicant that if the transcript bears it out, they will do it. Again, the board ultimately decides grant or deny, and ultimately decides if it's a grant, exactly what the conditions are, whether they're stipulated to or not.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Wilson?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciated the comments that Mr. Rasiopi shared about all the changes that were agreed to prior to the beginning of the site plan. I think that's very important, and I commend the applicant and the residents for participating in that. So thank you. And let me just jump to the lighting, this whole business with the shields. One thing on the lighting that really stands out to me, and I think is very important, is the stipulation to agree to the International Dark Sky Association lighting, the standards. And I would encourage any residents who have continuing concerns about lighting to go to that website and look up those criteria. They're on there, and to me that was a huge accomplishment for the applicant to agree to comply with those standards. And it may be that the shielding issue is addressed within the standards also. So just a heads up when you go back to the transcript on that. A couple of comments about construction traffic. It's my understanding there's large vehicles there now. Just to confirm the conditions of approval, the construction vehicles are supposed to be on the service road, right? And not on the other roads?
Correct. That is one of the conditions I read. The applicant continues to stipulate to that, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
So are there construction vehicles on Stockton now that's the applicant is aware of?
We're not aware of them. Of course, we don't own Lot 5. We're just under contract. So if they are construction vehicles, they're not ours.
Okay,
The Visions had requested permission to bring some material in, so there is, trucks entering the site and bringing material in on Stockton Drive.
okay, that's Visions, not the applicant.
That's correct.
Thank you. One question that came up, I believe it was at the last meeting about the, that left turn on Prescott onto Park, which you're not supposed to do. And there was discussion about erecting a barrier. And I know I know this is not the applicant's responsibility, but it does come up in connection with circulation on the site. And I just want to clarify, Mr. Slate, perhaps you can clarify this. Is Morris County planning to look at that intersection and perhaps construct the barrier that would prohibit the left turn in and the left turn out on Park?
Yes, that's my understanding, and I think that's part of the, Route 24 bypass, I'll call that, to address the Park Avenue in Columbia. I've had a few conversations with the county engineer in reference to providing a barrier at that location. I'm not sure when it's going to be constructed, but, that is something that we're requesting be incorporated into the plan.
Okay, good. I think that'll be helpful. I had a question about walkways. When Mr. Assiopi, or maybe it was Mr. Warner, I'm not sure who read the locations. There is a walkway on the site that's at the top of, it's like right near where the steep slope that goes down to Warren. Is that considered a walkway? Is that part of what's being repaved, or is it going to be left as is?
That is considered a walkway, and that is being paved.
It's on the site plan.
And it's on the site plan.
Okay, it's on the site plan for being paved. Okay.
Yes.
Does the Red Bulls property go, I could probably see this on the map myself, but I'm asking it as a question. Does it go all the way to the golf course?
Yes.
It's my recollection, if you go back a number of meetings, that there was some discussion of, completing the walkway that goes along Prescott. I believe it's between Lee and the service road there? Or I'm asking a question. I have a recollection of this being discussed, but I don't recall what the outcome was.
That was a condition of the original approval where the golf course requested that the walkway be relocated off the roadway. So that is that gravel path that runs along the top of that steep slope that you've discussed. So a lot of people walk in the roadway at that location, and I've been, contacted a number of times on that issue. And the trail is continuous, but it loops around the backside of that westerly development. So that was a condition of the original approval. I don't think that can be modified. It was an agreement that was worked out with the golf course.
I see. Okay, good. Thank you for that clarification. Looking here, I know there was one other thing that came up. It was repeated a few times. There was a request, if residents have questions about various things, the lighting, the noise. Who do they, how does the communication work between residents and the Red Bulls? Does it go through the HOA, or what about the Green Knolls Featherly? How do they, how does communication between residents and the Red Bulls work going forward?
Unfortunately, that's through my office.
Oh, boy. Okay, so, all right. At least we have an answer. And looking through my notes here, I did say at the beginning that I appreciate the offline from the site plan work that was done between the Red Bulls and the neighbors. I think that's very good, and I appreciate also the desire to be good neighbors. That stands out to me. That's not always the case with every application, and it does seem to be happening in this application, and I'm very glad to see it. So I believe that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other board members have questions or comments on the conditions as presented? I do have one. Mr. Lesso?
I don't have a question on the conditions that were presented. I have a question for the board to add another condition. So.
Okay, why don't we get to that next? On the condition on the lights for the times that they're turned out in the evening, 11 o'clock was listed as the time, but my understanding from the testimony is that was only if there are late night exercises or games, but that when there is not, the lights will be turned out earlier. Is that right?
Are you referring to the parking lot lights, not the field lights?
The parking light,
Right.
the parking lights.
The way the condition was stipulated to was, except for the security level lighting, no later than 11 p.m. We didn't specifically write, I didn't specifically write into that, but it should be earlier when it can be earlier, but we can do that. Unless.
Well, I mean, you can write that in, but it's harder to do in practice.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the original request from Mr. Amorosa was midnight.
True.
And I think the mayor said too late, make it 11. And so we made it 11. But I don't think you can have this, I think lights are just on timers. And again, I'm not a facilities guy, but I think lights are on timers generally, and they usually are set at a certain time.
And I do remember that part of the topic had to do with the fact that it might not be players that need the
Right.
lights, it's the people who work there and security
It
and,
would be staff.
Okay.
It is rarely, of course, as you know, Mr. Chairman, the case where we go beyond simply the drop dead time, if you will, the lights off, the shut off time.
right.
And in fact, here, with respect to the field lights, we did go a little further and got the applicant to stipulate they'll shut off within 30 minutes after usage, but in no event later than 10 p.m. for that one. But parking lot lights might be a different story. They
Okay,
generally are.
all right, thank you. Professionals, Paul, do you have any comments or questions on the stipulations?
No, I mean, I participated in
Okay.
the drafts and I covered everything that I had in my notes, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Jim?
No, same thing. Everything in my notes was covered.
Okay, and Joe?
Same, no, everything was covered.
Okay, thank you. Joe?
One of the things that troubles me that we as a planning board sometimes don't grasp or have an opportunity to be part of is what I'm going to say, the main lighting that is seen by the public on the streets. So again, I point again to the Provident Bank where you have these two gigantic signs that are on 24/7 and almost illuminate Madison Avenue. So I have a concern about the sign on Columbia Avenue. I mean, we've heard a lot of people here that are adjacent to the facility, but we really haven't heard anyone from across the street on Loman and those other streets that are going to be facing this. Really is much more of an advertising sign because it's going to be a sponsor sign. So I have concerns that right now, we don't have any, not sure the right word would be. We don't have any knowledge from the applicant as to what time they're going to shut that sign off, or does that sign plan to be on 24/7? And I would like to see that sign get shut off at some reasonable time so that it's not on 24/7, lighting up all of Columbia Turnpike.
Mr. Chairman, may I comment? As I recall the conversation about the signs that are on the street, it wasn't a fully illuminated sign. There were letters that were being illuminated, and those illumination of the letters would be dusk to dawn. So it's not any way replicating what you're suggesting with the Providence sign or whatever that other sign you were referring. It's not that. It's a sign that has letters illuminated, and it goes dusk to dawn. It doesn't go 24/7. There's no reason to have them lit during the day. And I don't think you're going to see, a bright white light, a backlit light like you might have imagined if you're thinking of the Providence sign. It's not going to be that at all, as I recall the testimony.
I would agree with Ms. Murphy on that too. That signage, the lighting is rather subtle on it as opposed to the Provident. I'm well aware of the Provident Bank signage, but we get calls on that as well. That light is an issue, but I would not say it's a fair comparison for this lighting, along the frontage on Columbia to that lighting.
Nevertheless, Mr. Rassiopi, I take it the applicant would at least stipulate that the sign on Columbia Avenue being only the letters illuminated from dusk to dawn.
Yes, I think that was the testimony, yes. And I think
That's what I remember.
Homeowners Association light is on
Right.
all the time. I'm not sure, but I do think it is.
They're not forced.
Okay, I get it.
Okay. So at this point, if anyone would like to, we can continue with our deliberation here. Really, it's a continuation, I suppose.
I'd like to make a motion. Are we ready for that?
I don't think we're quite ready. I
Okay.
think that we need to describe why we might vote the way we're going to vote, and pros and cons, and why you are in favor or not in favor of the application. I think we owe it to the public to at least express the basis for the vote that we're going to have. But if you'd like to,
I'd like to make a motion and then have us have that conversation.
we can do it that way. Yeah.
So I'd like
you
to make a motion that we approve the application with all of the conditions that have been stipulated. And I want to especially thank, yes? Oh, excuse me, Linda Murphy. I'd like to commend the applicant for the outreach pre, during, and post the applicant's presentation to us, and the fact that they've made so many changes as a result of public comment, I think is just stellar all by itself. So basically, just about everything that was brought up has been addressed in one way or another. So I do make a motion that we approve.
So that was a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Joseph Alesso, second.
Mr. Lesso, second. Discussion.
And I just stated why I think so.
Okay, your discussion. Okay, any other discussion?
I guess go right down the line. Mr. Chairman, I think that the applicant has done a very good job of, with the exception of the sign on Columbia, addressing all of the concerns of the public. I'm sure that, if I'm a homeowner living right next door, I might not be thrilled. We've seen, I live in an area that's going to be developed, and we're not crazy about the development that comes in. But as you said, we don't really have the right to say yes or no. We have the right to modify the application to make it the best application it could be. And I think that the applicant's done a great job of listening to objections and addressing them. And I get the sense that this is a good applicant. And when Jim's office, the zoning officer, gets those calls, I think the Red Bulls will be quick to address them in a positive way. That's the sense I get, that this is a good applicant, this is a good owner.
Thank you. I would like to clarify that I didn't say that we can't vote no. But we need to be clear as to why we vote no and how it relates to the zoning, how it relates to the public interest, and how it relates to community in general. So just wanted to be a little clearer on that, but I understand your point. Mr. Flowers, you want to?
Sure. Well, in taking a step back, I think we all appreciate the public's, extensive, persistent, very detailed, detail-oriented participation throughout the process. I think we're really fortunate in the township here to have, members of the public who can bring such a high level of scrutiny to the application. And then, of course, the Red Bulls for the responsiveness to the public's feedback and that of the boards. I find, the buildings for the most part to be architecturally appealing. They really, the care they went to make everything aesthetically pleasing is really appreciated. The extensive landscaping, it's kind of over the top. At the last meeting, when they announced that they would not be, moving forward with plans for Field 9, it seemed like there was a collective sigh of relief with that. So I really appreciated that. It seems that, overall, it's a pretty low intensity usage for the property. And, they're agreeing with all of the conditions for the approval. So for all those reasons, I'm inclined to vote yes.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To follow suit with everyone who's spoken before, I want to thank the public for their ongoing construction and determined feedback, not only during the planning board process, but also with engaging with the Red Bulls back in fall of last year when they had their first public meeting and presentation on this. I would agree, Mr. Rasiopi. I've never seen an applicant go as far above and beyond the expectation of public comment and outreach with our residents. And I know not only that the governing body appreciates it, but the planning board appreciates it and the neighbors appreciate it. I agree with Mr. Flowers. We're getting a quality development here that a lot of other developers wouldn't have the resources or resolve to invest so much money in this property in terms of buffering, landscaping, state-of-the-art lighting, LEED certified buildings. This is a high quality developer, a high quality future owner, and I think it will benefit the town. I think the drastically reduced impact on traffic is also a key thing for me, going from an office research facility to this type of facility. And I think you've made a lot of concessions, and the board, I think, agrees that taking all that comment from the public, take all that and put it into something that I think we can all agree is much better than what this could actually happen here on this property. I mean, it's a very large property. We could get a lot of different things here. And I think while I never would have dreamed that this would be happening here, I think it was innovative, and I would support moving forward with the application and approving it.
Thank you. Mr. Bai?
Yes, I agree with much of what has been said so far. When the first you looked at the application, I mean, it struck me that I could not imagine another proposal for a site like this of this size that would have a lower impact than this does in terms of number of people and traffic and everything else. However, because of the comments and many comments from the public, realized that there's trade-offs. It wasn't all a free lunch. Yes, during the day there are many fewer people. A couple hundred versus several thousand if it was an office park. However, on the other side of that, there are the extended hours. There's activities on weekends and at nights that you may not associate with an office and research park. However, I worked for Honeywell on that site starting 40 years ago for 30 years. And I tell you, I was there a lot more weekends and nights than I wanted to be. And I think that was reflected in the traffic report. There is still activity. That said, it's a real, I mean, that is a definite difference. And so things are stretched out. You have noise and activity there that's not necessarily there that you have to be concerned with. And the field lights. Kind of in response to that, I spent a lot of time out in the Red Bull facility, around the Red Bull facility, visited many times at various times a day, including weekends, to get a sense of what it actually is like. And I was somewhat surprised, actually, how unobtrusive it is. I mean, you could stand on Melanie Lane there 100 feet from a field. And I was specifically, I remember on a Sunday afternoon when the academy, one of the academy games was going on. There's an academy game on the field. I counted somewhere 50, 60 parents in attendance at the game. And you had to walk up within about 50 feet of the field to really even hear what was going on. From Melanie Lane, if you really listened, you could occasionally hear a thump of a foot against the ball. But I was completely overwhelmed if a car drove by. You could not hear that. So there's very little going on. That's also true during afternoon academy practices. From Melanie Lane, where you're standing, you have to walk up within 25 or 50 feet to hear anything that's going on. They're fairly small groups. It's very much unlike what I remember Saturdays at Frelinghuysen with all the soccer games going on, where you got multiple fields and kids and all over the place. As Mr. Rasiopi said, it's a very disciplined environment and low key. So that, I felt a little more comfortable in that. And then the field lighting, I did have a chance to go see the Milburn Library field, which was pointed out as one of the fields with this kind of lights. Actually, I was there before I got the list, looked at the lights and said, hey, I bet you those are the new lights. They're quite unobtrusive compared to, well, I'm thinking of the last generation ones that are on Cornine Field, which aren't all that bad, but the library fields, the most obvious was you could see the lit field as it was testified to. You can see the field that's lit, but none of the residences in the houses actually see the field surfaces in the way things are laid out. The light poles themselves, yes, there is a light there, but they're a whole lot less obtrusive than the lights that line Stockton Drive, for instance, which are pretty bright all the way up. So I felt a lot more comfortable about the field lighting and being less intrusive than it was. So, given that, I think that the trade-off, the positives still very much outweigh the negatives, and I'm in favor of the application. And thank the Red Bulls for making the changes in response to the public comment that they have, because I think they have definitely made it a better application because of it. So, thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Quillen?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with the comments made by other board members. I think this was a very well done application. I thank the Red Bulls for a very professional job and for their tremendous work with outreach to the residents. They couldn't respond to absolutely every comment in a positive way, but I think they responded to an awful lot of them. And it was particularly impressive to me to see the list of the things that they had done in response to comments from the members of the public before they submitted the plan to us. I wasn't aware of that until tonight. So that was very interesting and impressive. And I agreed with almost everything that Mr. Rasiopi said. The only thing I didn't agree with was to compare us to Florham Park, where I think that the development standards in Florham Park are not something we should want to come close to. So that would be my one comment there. But seriously, I think that, as other board members said, this is a much less intensive use than what was permitted with the office and research facility. I think far less traffic, and also less traffic directed toward Madison Avenue. So for that reason and all the other reasons that have been mentioned, I'm also in favor of the application. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Wilson?
Yeah, I've already given some of my comments, but I would and I agree with much of what's been said. I found Mr. Bai's experience being at the site on Melanie Lane to be insightful. And as far as the noise and it does stand out to me that this is a way less intensive use as far as traffic volume than what's approved already. Like we've said, there are different hours, but my other concern was the lighting, and I do feel that the lighting has been well addressed for the reasons I said before. And I appreciate the work that was done prior to coming to site plan. And I very much appreciate all the participation by the immediate neighbors. We do understand that it's a frustrating process at times, and it's also an emotional process. These are people's homes, and that's different than being your place of work. So I am in favor of the application, and for all of the other reasons that were stated by others. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'd like to congratulate members of the public on your work here. I'd like to express how your participation has really changed this application. We don't know what it would be were it not for you. So if you leave disappointed because you're going to have a facility, think about all the changes you helped facilitate to make this project what it's going to be. And I think for that there's a lot of credit that should be given to you, and I think it's something that you should be proud of and all the time and effort you have placed in this process. As I said, and I'll continue to say, we need public participation in all of these. This particular applicant has been a lot easier to work with and a lot more amenable to projects than what we've seen in the past. Not entirely, but on occasion. So I think that shows a lot of their intent, as I said, and they've been attentive to the public from the very beginning. I personally am so happy for the architecture. As Mr. Flowers said, it's nice to see some modern architecture being put down into the township. I hope to see some more of that. And I really am pleased with the low level of activity that will be taking place on the site in relation to what else could have been there. I mean, basically, you're getting a park setting. I think that the landscaping will really make it pretty from the outside. It will help mitigate the sound. It's not just the trees, but it's the underbrush as well that they've been willing to put in to make it a much more pleasant site to look at. The fact that they were willing to remove Field 9 and associated parking, again, is a testament to all of your work. And the dark sky lighting. We are very concerned about how lighting affects the neighbors. And I think that their willingness to put in the dark sky, which, as Ms. Wilson says, we can research exactly how that might look, and Mr. Bai has seen it. I think that it's going to make a big difference to the residents and what it is that they see at night. So I want to echo what everybody else has said, and I'm the last person speaking. I guess we're ready for a roll call on the motion. The motion is to approve the application as submitted with the stipulations as expressed by Mr. Warren and agreed to by applicant's counsel.
Mr. Alessa,
Yes.
Mr. Flowers,
Yes.
Mr. Quillen,
Yes. Yes.
Ms. Wilson,
Yes.
Ms. Murphy,
Yes.
Mr. Jorfi,
Yes.
Mr. Bai,
Yes.
Mr. Benoit,
Yes.
so move.
Okay, thank you very much, applicant. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Members
Good
of the
stuff.
public, thank you very much. Appreciate everyone's time.
Thank you for
Yeah.
all your hard work, patience, dedication.
I make a motion, we adjourn?
We have to, well, we may be able to do that. But we do have to, members of the public who want to leave can leave. Otherwise, we can open up the room to members of the public who want to make comments not related to this application. It's on the agenda. Public commentary.
Yeah. I just forgot to remove that.
Oh, we don't have
But
to
it's-
do that?
It was a
Okay.
typo.
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion, we adjourn without the public comment. That was not
Okay.
necessary for this hearing.
Motion to adjourn.
I second.
Second. All in favor?
Hi.
Aye.